All right, good evening, everyone. I will call our Board of Education meeting to order at 6:30. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there any public comment in the room tonight? Okay, seeing none. Any public comment online? Okay, then we will move into our one and only agenda item, which is the budget. Um, Everyone has all the revised forms. Troy, is there anything you want to point out before we start with questions and comments?
Yeah, there are a few things I would like to point out. You do have a revised budget reduction consideration form on here. And when we went through and looked at everything again, we did find some additional health insurance savings, which is reflected on here. And we were able to put a few additions, including the new equipment on here. The new equipment on here that's listed as $80,000 addition. That's 80,000 on top of the 37.5 that was already in that line when it was at 6.46. So it's a total, when you look in the budget, of 117.5. So that 117.5 is actually what purchases the items that are listed on the sheet, the 90 Chromebooks, 14 laptops, 10 smartboards, and the half of the switches. So I just wanted to point that out to you. And then I wanted to also point out that you had asked for several items to be prepared from the last meeting, and there's a handout that describes those, and it's called Technology and Summer School Information for Board of Ed Fiscal Year 26 budget. There's 3 pages on that document. And the first item is you wanted to see the projected revenue or collection of Chromebook fees from families for the insurance. And I broke that over 4 years by grade level. And we would start insuring or collecting fees from when students get a new Chromebook. So you could see how that works. There's a little description below. And then the second page has, you asked for a plan for catch up and then maintaining of the teacher laptops. So you'll see that on the top of the second page, basically suggesting that the board purchased 32 teacher laptops from the non-lapsing account this year, an additional 14 in the budget, and that 14 could stay in the budget for several years as the maintenance. And you could see the year of purchase of all the laptops, how many, and how that would work. And then you asked for more of a description for the technology infrastructure replacement. So you'll see that on that same page. You'll see the old age of the switches that we already replaced 4 at Wheeler this year, but we have 9 other ones from 2016 to replace. Most schools do replace them every 8 years. And we also have other infrastructure needs coming up, like a new firewall, probably next year. And then the other switches could wait a year or two because we have access points to purchase and then servers to replace. And these are all expensive items. So I think it's important to budget infrastructure in the budget every year. And the next page is just simply a repeat of one of the other pages that's that you have. Is like where things are in non-lapsing versus budget. And then regarding summer school, the administrative team does not support the continuation of that, would rather see the money reallocated to technology. And that's really what I wanted to point out.
So if we can go ahead, I want to try and do this in an efficient form. So if we look at that sheet, the reduction form, it's the one updated for today. Why don't we start there with questions or concerns, and then we'll sort of move through. So the first item is salary adjustments. So that number has changed slightly from the last budget, so it's decreased a bit. Does anybody have questions or comments about that? Okay, I'll start with mine. So on 4.2, that number was $64,000, 667. And now it's 63,393. Why the adjustment and where did it go?
Kathy, I don't have the answer for that, top of my head.
So as part of this process, on Saturday, Troy and I went back to the very first budget. And in order to make sure that every single number was correct, we bumped it up against, went account by account and totaled it up. In some instances, rather, if we were adjusting salaries or anything to do with salaries, we put it in one line. So some of the social security and so forth, they all got piled in there. And we just ended up breaking a little bit of the FICA and so forth out of that number.
Okay. So when I was looking through on the detail sheet, I noticed that there are a couple of things that we didn't talk about. And I may be the only one on the board that feels like this, so I don't want to represent that this is the way the board feels. As we've gone through these and we found efficiencies, I'm not opposed to the budget coming in at whatever the best number is. 4% is what they told us, but I think what I'm seeing is numbers sort of like reworked a bit to get to that exact 4%. But if we're finding efficiencies, I'd like to just take the efficiencies because I think it puts us in a better position for starting next year. So when I'm looking at the budget detail and I'm looking at line numbers 13 and 14, what I'm seeing there, the increase, I'm seeing a 5% increase on line 14 and 6. I don't want to make sure I'm talking about the right one. On line 14, it's 5%, and on line 15, it's 6%. So that increase, both of those increases, as well as line 28, seem not in line with the other percent changes for salary increases. I wonder if there's a reason why those are a bit higher.
I will take a look while you continue. But in terms of the first one you said was line 13 or 14?
14.
14.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you just back up a second? Where are you looking? Are you
On
looking
the
on
detail
the
sheet.
Right, we have
detail?
multiple
I
detail
know.
sheets.
No, this is the one that's
Right.
called the detail sheet.
Just that one.
This one right here,
This
budget
one.
detail.
Budget
Okay.
detail.
Just
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The detail does match to the summary, but there are 2 or 3 accounts could be added together. In regards to the facilities,
So, and just so everyone's aware, so these questions and these lines are sort of the ones that go along with the salary adjustment thing on the top of our reduction. So that's why I was just taking a peek at them this morning just to make sure I understood everything.
so your question is not that the facilities director position has changed. It's
No.
why the increase
No,
is that
right. So
high.
as I'm looking, I'm like, okay, so it looks like I see where the increases have sort of been brought down a little from the initial.
Yeah.
And these 3 lines sort of stuck out at me as these are sort of above
Yeah.
what everybody else, what we're looking at for
And
everybody else.
absolutely, that was a conscious decision by the superintendent to do that.
Okay. Troy, is there a reason why you don't want that increase to be in line with the other increases
Yeah.
that you're giving to staff across the board?
Yeah, because that position, I believe, is underpaid. According to other districts, I believe he needs more pay for what he does.
So you are looking to it's not necessarily a merit increase, but you're looking to increase the position. You're like give it
Yeah, it's
some
both.
sort of like a,
It's both. It's an increased
Okay.
position and merit.
yeah. I would love, as we're looking into the future sustainably, and again, like this is just Stephanie's opinion, if before we readjust salaries to be like matching other districts across the board. That as a board, we have that conversation to make sure that when we have to replace something, we should always be looking at where our salaries are because some of them got woefully left behind, right? Remember, like our paras, we had to give them a big bump. So we should always be looking. But I think that would be a great board conversation to have. Are we changing what that position should be funded at, separate from merit raises, which I think that should be totally within your discretion.
And then in your second question was line 15, is that correct?
It was line 15, that's up 6%.
Are you looking at 6% from this year's budget to next year's budget?
I'm looking at 6% over the fiscal year 25 forecast. So you're forecasted at 661,998, and you have an increase of 44,731.
No, because if I'm forecasting 662,000 and next year's budget is 678, that the difference you're looking at is between budget year to budget year. Yeah.
Okay.
And this year's budget, we had changes with me coming on and the other business manager being here for an overlap time. There have been staff changes that have caused our forecast this year to stray from our budget.
Okay. And we're going up significantly from than what we budgeted for. So we budgeted for 633,514,
Correct.
and we're proposing 678,245
Correct.
$16,000 decrease
from where we're forecasted. But Kathy says that our forecast was like an irregularity because we had some crossover. So I'm just looking for some information about sort of the size of the increase. over what we budgeted.
2.94.
Okay, thank you.
There's one individual that's contracted at 6.2%. Everybody else is 2.94.
That makes so much sense. So there's a contracted number in
Yep.
there. That makes total sense. And then line 42, cafeteria aides.
Yep.
We are up significantly on that line. Can you talk about that?
Sure.
Because
Yep.
that looks like, what, 40%?
Well, again, it's budget versus budget.
Mhm.
And they budgeted for 2 individuals this year. And there are actually 3 cafeteria folks. So that's causing the $66,000 variance from forecast to budget. And so we're not up that much between the 22,000 to next year's 22,000.
And the only reason that it's like that is because we thought we had 2, but we really had 3.
Yeah.
Easy. Thank you. Those are all the questions I have on salary adjustments. Does anybody else have any questions on salary adjustments? Okay, moving on to 1.1
I
FTE.
just have a quick question to help me follow. Sorry, I feel like I'm slow to the,
That's okay.
late to the party or something. I'm looking at the detail and I'm trying to cross-reference to this, to the shorter sheet. And I'm having a hard time pulling the line items in.
So if I could recommend that you all were sent an Excel version, and if you go to that summary page and click in, it tells you exactly what detail.
Okay,
lines.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so back to the reduction sheet. 1.1 FTE. Does anybody want to talk any more about that? Okay. Health insurance, 155, 426. Any questions about that? Summer school, 31.5.
Sorry,
Okay.
my only question is just, were those found things because something changed from the health insurance side of things? Or were those changes because of staff members who adjusted what they were planning on doing and you had that conversation?
Both.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely both. We had a new employee who did not choose to take our insurance when the position formerly had. We had an adjustment with with Learn to decrease the expected increase. And there were other folks that, positions that changed coverage.
I'm sorry. I'm also feeling like I'm late to the party for some reason when I'm trying to catch up with these things. It's been a long couple of weeks. So these are solid. This isn't a situation where, I mean, is the majority of this coming from a decrease from the learn side of things? Or if we end up hiring a new person in a position and they take health insurance, is this going to significantly fluctuate, I guess?
It could, I believe it could fluctuate a bit, yeah. Significantly, I don't know, but I believe it could fluctuate. I think it's a very non-conservative point of view that there's not a lot of wiggle room in that number.
Chet, does that answer your question? Okay. Summer school, we had that in at the last, oh, actually, we moved it to non-lapsing. And now it's being suggested that it's just out. Questions about that?
Yeah, I have a couple questions on this. So this 31.5 is an increase from what we are required by law to have, correct? So we are required to have ESY. And so this is, we're projecting that adding regular ed would be 31.5.
Correct.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how, I guess it's hard for me to ask this. Like, how do we decide how a student gets that opportunity to do the ASY versus a
It's
child?
through the PPT process, planning and placement team that meets annually at least on each student who have a IEP, individualized education program. And if the team determines that the student needs that summer extended school year service, then it gets on their plan, and then we're legally bound to provide that.
So not all children with IEPs are 504.
No.
And then can that change? So what if a student, when does that change and how do we reflect that?
Usually during an annual review, but a parent can request a PPT meeting at any time to review the plan, and a parent could say, hey, can we take a look at this? Does my child need this extra service or whatever it is? And then the team decides as a team what services that child needs.
But summer school is just essentially to keep students from losing things, right? It's not to perpetuate them or make them, so it's to keep them from sliding, correct?
That's the main point of it.
Okay. So there are children that probably could use this, and I understand it was recommended, but I guess I'm still concerned about taking this out without a plan. Seeing how we've had this for a while, it doesn't seem like it's a COVID catch up. I'm concerned about taking it out altogether without a kind of a backup plan.
Well, we can certainly talk about some backup plans, some alternative plans, but at this point in time, it's the superintendent's recommendation that we don't fund it in the budget. And my recommendation is based on a whole lot of input from my team, like the employees that I work with.
You did meet with Rob and Kristen, and they both agreed that summer school was
I-
not essential.
I met with my administrative team, and it's a solid opinion that we do not have summer school for regular ed students.
You said that you looked at a study that indicated that it had very little positive impact. Can you?
Yeah, one particular study by John Haidt, who actually wrote the Anxious Generation book. He had done a study on the effect of summer school, and he has a concept called effect size. It's not his concept, but he used that as a way of determining the effectiveness, and it showed very little impact that summer school really has on learning. So, that on top of observations of our teachers and administrators leads to this recommendation of not funding it.
Stephanie, I'm not going to raise my hand.
That's okay. You could just talk. Hi, Lisa.
Hi. So I'm in favor of summer school, but this is the third time that Troy has mentioned that the administrator are inclined to not have summer school and would rather reallocate the 31,500 to the technology line. And so I'm of the opinion that we should do that, follow the recommendation.
Thank you, Lisa.
I guess my I don't mean to harp on this, but I guess where I'm coming from is I'm 100% behind the technology. I think we need to fund it. I think it is invaluable. Where I'm having a trouble is, and that technology will support every student, right? It's going to hit kids from kindergarten all the way through grade 12. So I understand why we have to put that in the budget and we need it. Where I have a problem is that we are taking students that are vulnerable who could show a decrease in retention over the summer months. We're basically not funding that. So we have, and it's a terrible position to be in, right? We are essentially saying, like, do we take this pot of money and help all the students, or do we take this pot of money and help few, but those that are most vulnerable? So that's kind of where I'm landing on this.
Can I chime in for just a quick second?
Sure.
And I totally get what you're saying, Jamie. If this were a program that our admins were saying, this is a really important program, our children will fall behind without it, we need it, and we were making a decision to cut it anyway. But I think that what I'm hearing from the admins is that we have things in place to keep these kids going along. It isn't used as robustly as maybe it could be. Attendance wise, even though a child's maybe signed up for summer school, a lot of times they're not there. They have family vacations, they do things. It's not maybe as robust of as a program as we think. So I'm trusting the admins are saying, with or without it being a budgetary issue, we can do away with summer school and reallocate the funds, not necessarily just reallocating to the technology, but just in general, a reallocation, because it's a program they're not feeling is vital. It's just like there might be other programs that we no longer use that we aren't aware of or something like that. I think we have to kind of trust that they're saying, you know, they're not saying we need more Chromebooks instead. They're just saying we don't need this program, is the way I'm understanding what
I
they're
think it would be
telling
an
us.
easier conversation if we weren't having it in the context of the budget. And I think that this is a good example. And we had talked about a couple of other things that maybe like don't feel good here. Because I hear what you're saying. It sort of feels like, well, we can't support those kids. So we'll reallocate to programs that support everyone, which feels bad. But I think what they're saying is we were sort of recommending that we do away with this anyway, but it feels really uncomfortable here in the context of a budget conversation.
Well, I do think when we talked last time, and I was more supportive, is that we were looking at ways to improve it or maybe making
Right.
it different. And now I feel like we're just shutting the door and saying, no, there's going to be,
We're not looking at other things.
right, like that's another reason I'm.
So Troy, is there like so because we had a conversation about that and you had talked about being supportive of that. Is that something that's different? Do you have plans? Are there going to be further conversations, or is this just done? I think some partners with other districts, and, the Seaport and that sort of stuff.
I think in terms of running a summer program, what we're saying is that's off the table. We're not recommending it unless it's the ESY that we're mandated to run. In terms of making sure the kids are prepared for the summer and they have productive things to do and activities, suggested activities and reading assignments and, different enrichment activities they could do with their families and us to make sure that families know of these things, know of what's available. That's something we do always, and we can certainly make sure we focus on it even heavier this year and make sure families know what enrichment opportunities, what types of activities they can do to keep their skills sharp. We also want kids to be kids and have a summer as a kid and have and play and be social and to develop those important skills. And I think summer is a great opportunity to do that. And again, it's the opinion of my team that it is very little impact, and even the kids that come have very little impact. So we're suggesting they do something different with their time.
Is there a way that we could measure? So if we take this out of the budget, is there a way that we could measure the impact so we're able to see it? Do you have something there?
We can measure like summer skill loss, and we have assessments that we give towards the end of the year and the beginning of the year, and we certainly can look at that data.
Can we, do we already do those assessments this year?
Yes.
So we have something to compare them against
Yeah.
next year?
We need to be a little careful with that though, because we have such a small student body that it doesn't take much for something to tank that and not make it valid. There's been pretty extensive studies regarding
I'm just
retention
wondering if there's a
and the number
way.
of months that you have in between learning,
Yeah,
the levels of retention, the drop in retention, all of those have been done on mass scales where they've looked at if a kid is out of school for 1 month, what's the difference between that and a kid being out of school for 3 months? And it's like an 80% retention down to a 75% retention. So it's not a significant drop when you do that. Just I know that from year-long school studies and a variety of other things that they did where they were trying to check those types
sure.
of things.
So I guess when we're saying it's not impactful, that feels like it's just a term. And how can we say it's not impactful? And I'm hearing Jamie say, like, I'm really uncomfortable with this, that we're like shutting out this group of students that won't have anything else to access, but administrators saying, hey, look, we really don't need this. Is there a way that we can have some like objective data that says, yeah, it really isn't? Or Chet, are you saying that there is that objective data that exists that says that 1 to 3 months, really, there's not that
I mean,
much?
they're
of a difference?
analyzing data all the time. I think that for us as a board to now be sticking our fingers in to say, I need data on
I think we ask for data all the time, and I don't think it's bad to say, how did you decide? How did you come up with the term not impactful? I think that's okay, and I do think that that's us as the board. I'm not going to tell them what to measure or how to measure it. I'm just asking, is there a way? So if in 2 years from now they say we need summer school again, how do we know? And does that then make this decision easier if we can say, well, we can do a look back and we can see what the results are?
Well, it would go back to those end of year and beginning of year assessments that we're talking about. And obviously not every student is taking advantage of summer school. It becomes certain kids that then become kind of handpicked, if you will, correct? If I understand the process, they're kind of recommended for.
Correct.
So the administrative team, the teachers would still you could still identify those kids and go, these would have been the kids, and look at their scores a little bit more closely rather than holistically, because it's going to be that small sample of those kids. Was their inability to access something like this because it was cut out, did it have that negative impact on their retention over time? I think that's where you could look at it, because you're going to know who those kids are. And
I think
that's an internal measure you can use.
That's a
great.
better way to do it.
And then someone could just tell us.
Sure.
And I also, I mean, going back to what Christine said. Sorry. We do trust Rob and Christine, but I mean, also, Kristen, having a rough night, guys. Going home.
I mean, we trust Christine too.
But, no, the point I'm trying to make is we've had so many people in attendance and so many people watching online, and I don't think we've had an overabundance of parents reaching out saying that we absolutely need summer school. So there hasn't been a lot of parental support claiming that it's essential for their child either.
And you're mentioning just a couple people on my team. My team is a lot larger than that, and the discussion involves many more people. Just so, I'm just suggesting maybe we don't actually say individual names, because it's not on a person or two, this decision. This is why I'm taking responsibility for this with a whole lot of input from a lot of members of my team.
I guess it will counter that. I've heard that parents are just finding out about this at their parent, or whether they had parent teacher, excuse me, or student led. So I think they're just finding out about it, that it's a possibility that it won't be funded. So I guess they have the opportunity to voice their opinions at our budget hearing.
Is this a deal breaker for anyone here at the table? Just straw polling here? Okay. It's okay. It can be.
It's not the only one.
Okay. All right. Maybe as we go along, if people sort of indicate that, so we know where to spend our time. Because while we don't need a consensus and we do need a consensus in some ways, a majority, but we don't need everyone to be in favor of it. I think we give the best budget if we can sort of all bring perspective. So, okay, so this one's a big one. I'm just gonna star it here. Okay, VOAG and magnet tuition, that seems pretty self-explanatory and something that we really went over at the last meeting. Everybody good with that? Any other questions? Professional service consultants? Telephone?
Just cutting down the increase by a little.
I think that
Thinking
was one of
it's a
the
safe-
lines that we had identified as like, why did that get so big? And then Kathy said, you know what? I think I could make it a
Yeah, it
little.
was an estimate.
Negotiations to non-lapsing, I feel like we've really vetted that one. Sports transportation reduction. This is the same reduction now that we've seen over, let's see, was it on 324? So it was on 324 for 12.5. It was on 4.2 for 12.5. And now it's on 4.7, still at 12.5. Does anybody want to talk about that?
The only thing that I want to say on this, just because I know the Board of Finance had made a comment regarding that they wish that we had found this earlier. I mean, this is a loss of freedom for the coaches to be able to schedule matches. So it is something it's not just found money, it's a decision to change the way that transportation is run. I just want to make sure that that's clear. I'm still in favor of it. I think that it makes sense that we're not sending our kids across the state to be able to play. I know that there's a lot more competitive teams sometimes down on the Gold Coast, but at the same time, it makes perfect sense. I just want to make sure that that's understood, that was a change in our actual strategy and process, not just, oh, look, we found 12,500 in money.
So I would say, Chet, that I'm disappointed that we're not seeing a different number here after having conversations about our capital asset that we received from the town and we haven't been using, and now we're talking about using it, but we're not seeing it reflected here, because I wonder if we were able to figure in some of the savings from that asset, if we were to be able to not take 12,500 from that and sort of restore some of that ability for a coach to play a particular team. And maybe that's with like Burns' permission or however they figure out that they want to do that. But I'm concerned that and I went back and I watched that meeting and I pulled out our capital list that we talked about in September and October. And I went back and I listened, Troy, to you talking about savings then, like, why should this be a capital asset? Because we could save on this. And I'm concerned that number hasn't changed and we don't have any difference here. Can we talk about that a little
Yeah,
bit? Because I'm with Chet, I'd rather see more services.
So I agree. It would be great if we can see some savings by using some town vehicles more than we have for next year, moving them, using them more. There are a lot of things to be worked out before we start using them more. There is the licensing that we need to iron out. There is the inspections that we need to iron out. There is the regular maintenance. We just got to be ensured it didn't. And I just want everybody to know, like, I feel like I don't think fingers should be pointed on this particular situation. I think it's a situation that no one is at fault about either not using it or using this vehicle. I think it's a situation, it's a collaboration with the town that we haven't fully developed yet. And one of the things was the van needs a larger parking space to fit. And that was just recently done, and because it needs to be plugged in, so that the battery that runs the wheelchair lift doesn't die. Okay, so it was never on the school property for the school to use. All right, so I just want to be clear about that. And we need to make sure that we're following proper regulations and laws about marking the vehicles that students are traveling in. And Kathy and Bern actually are researching this. So we want to do it correctly. We don't want to have a tragic situation where now we're liable because we didn't have the proper markings on the vehicle. So there are things that we need to kind of look at the details and figure out. And we have every intention of doing that. We're just not there yet. So yes, I hope that we can see increased savings by using those vehicles more.
So for me, it's not about the process or pointing the finger, but I guess the process of doing it right, but rather how did we make this oversight? So in a draft on 9/24/2024, you have a quote on here of $56,000, $56,417 for us to actually purchase one. This was the number 3 priority for our capital list this year. And so I know that when you were thinking about using this, I mean, not only did we all kind of dream about this for a long time as a board, but there was real benefits to be realized here. And when I went back and I watched the meetings, because I couldn't remember really how this played out, it was early November when the selectmen voted not just to collaborate with us, but to actually give us that van. They said, we don't need it anymore. We have a space at the town garage where it can actually remain undercover. And they were going to do, they checked it all out. Alan checked it out, made sure the maintenance was done. Actually, at that meeting, Alan talked about how he would take that out and drive it around just to make sure that, there was no rot on the tires and stuff like that. And the only agreement that we had to make was the 8 to 10 trips a year that the senior center takes, mainly in the summer, that they could give us some heads up and we would make that available to them. So it pains me a bit that here we are at budget season with a budget where we're cutting stuff and we asked for this, we received it, and that was in early November. And on April 7th, we're talking about, we want to make sure we do it right. And we don't know, we haven't worked out these things yet. To me, it feels like this is not only a great use of our capital asset, but I think it looks bad for us when we're doing this budgeting, that we're not using everything that's available to us. So I understand that perhaps you're not prepared to make an additional reduction, but I think it's a shame because if there's an additional reduction in savings that we see, it won't be reflected in the budget. And so the taxpayer never sees that, right? It'll free up some money to move around in our budget, but the taxpayer never sees the reduction.
Can I just make a couple comments on that as well?
Yes, please.
I appreciate what you're saying, Steph. But safety's first. And we know now what we didn't know then. November to now, with everything that's been going on, isn't a huge span of time. Kathy coming on board with the expertise she's had prior to coming here brought to light a lot of things that maybe we just didn't think of. We maybe didn't think of it soon enough. Maybe we just, we have a brand new AD. We've got new stuff going on with the business manager, and maybe we didn't jump on that quite as fast as we should have. But at the same time, I'm kind of feeling like we might have dodged something here because there are a lot of protocols besides just the public garage driving it around that we have to be on top of. We have to. There's quarterly things that need to be done.
Christine, without doubt, we
So-
have to. And this was not, and this is not the AD's job. This was a student activities passenger van. I'm simply saying that this points out a large problem that we have with how we created our capital list, number one.
But
And how
I feel
we
like we're
haven't
throwing
followed
out the
through.
van. We're not saying that we're not going to,
But we're not budgeting for it in this year's budget. So
because
have
we
to do
don't
that
know,
now.
we don't know yet. We
Right.
don't know what it's gonna cost to
But I
sign it
think
up.
we
to
should
do
know.
this,
And I'm disappointed that we
Okay.
don't know.
All right.
But we don't know what we don't know, and so it can't be factored in. But I think that that's disappointing because I don't want to see our kids not be able to go to play some spectacular team that challenges them downstate because like we had to cut that out of the budget. So that bums me out. If it doesn't bum anybody else out, then we can just move on to general building services. That's a cut of $30,000, 0.19. I think that's the same as it has been when we suggested it a while ago. Does anybody have any other questions about that? Before we get to the additions, Jamie, you had said that's not the only one.
I mean, I have nothing really else to say. I'm just not happy with the cut to 4%. I'm gonna pull an Alex Karpinski and say, out of principle, I don't agree with this budget.
Is there a place that you can point to that you are particularly unhappy with, or a place that we could look to address something?
I don't think there is, to be honest. There's no wiggle room. There just isn't.
I think the positive thing is that by doing this, we found things that like were just too high in our budget, right? Like VOAG tuition, magnet tuition, the telephones, our negotiations didn't need to be in the budget. So some good things did come out of it. So you don't want to, there's no area. You just don't like it.
I don't,
Okay.
I don't know if it's worth wasting time.
Okay.
It's just my opinion. So it's okay.
Okay, so one of the things that I noticed wasn't here, and it wasn't on the budget either, Troy, that $12,000 technology grant, did that just get like folded in somewhere? Because it disappeared from this sheet, and then it also used to be on our budget sheet, and it's not there anymore either.
Right.
That could be me. I netted it all together, so.
That's okay, I just wondered if did you like put it in something? Because it was showing as a separate thing.
I just, to be honest with you, I just took the list that we had, and the prices we had, and I assumed that the grant was already baked in. That could be my error.
So that would, I guess that would give us, if it's not in somewhere else, because it's on the last, it's on April 2nd on that budget reduction consideration sheet. So that would bring us down another $12,000
Correct.
if it's not already counted somewhere. So what do we do about that?
Well, I guess, not to put Troy on the spot, but looking at the numbers for technology, what was the 12,000 grant specifically for Chromebooks?
Chromebooks are smart boards.
Okay, so, okay. Well,
I guess is it factored into this budget or not?
it is not in the budget. However, Chromebooks are split between non-lapsing and the budget.
Sure. So we could take
Take it.
$12,000 out of our budget because we're getting $12,000 for Chromebooks. Is that right?
We could,
Okay.
That's true,
or
yeah.
not take it all out of non-lapsing.
Well, I think we're going to have that conversation in a minute. But I think that,
Well, hold on. The Chromebooks we're budgeting for are part of our year-over-year replacement plan, right? So if we take 12,000 out for a grant, now we're carting ourselves short in the budget next year.
sure, I don't want to do the
Chromebooks.
technology sheet yet. I just wanted to know if that was factored in or
Well,
not.
I know, I just don't want
Yeah.
to back 12,000 out of the budget all of a sudden if that was for Chromebook replacement that we're going to need next year.
So it had been backed out of the budget until today.
I don't know that. All I saw
Yeah,
it on
so
was
if
a
you-
reduction sheet. I
If you
didn't
go
see
back
it in
and you
the
look at
budget.
the reduction sheet on 4.2 as well as on 324, and then if you
Yes.
look at your budgets at the end of the budget, you'll see it on that sheet as well, and it just isn't on this one. So that was just my question. Was it in?
It's not on the
Close enough.
operating budget. If
Okay,
you want to back it out,
perfect.
go right ahead. Otherwise, take it out of non-lapsing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. As long as I know it's like not anywhere, we can decide where to put it later. Do we want to talk about the additions? Unemployment compensation, and then obviously new equipment as we roll into technology. Do you have questions about unemployment?
I have a question. The 30,000 in the unemployment, the one that we previously had, we were gonna have I don't know, there's been savings in unemployment and there's been increase. The last one was a $10,000 increment and now we're adding 30,000.
So that's where we put the retirement payout.
Well, that makes sense. Okay. Perfect. All right, so if we're good with questions on this sheet, can we look at the detail sheet that Troy gave us? Chromebook and insurance fees. Jamie, is that what you were looking for?
Yes, I couldn't remember. You mean, at the online meeting? Yep,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was looking for. I guess my only question about that is, I think you said it somewhere that it would be to replace hardware. Could it be used? Can you just explain that a little more? Is it possible to replace machines in the long run?
So I think we had explained the last time how we'd have to put this money into the student activity fund, but there may be a way that we can then give a check to the town and then free up the money in our budget for spending on really anything, but it could be technology related.
So
I think that's what we said last time.
I think Jamie's question is your last sentence of that report says insurance funds collected
Yes,
can go towards
can.
spare parts for the ones that are not insured currently that will need repairs and replacement parts.
Yeah.
And I think we were sort of thinking going down the road of, can we factor this into our replacement plans for the
Yeah.
actual Chromebooks? What Chromebooks are not currently insured?
So the current grade 9, not current 9 to
Didn't
12.
we buy insurance for them isn't that the $130 worth of insurance that's figured into their total
When we
price?
purchase new ones, when we purchase the grade 5 ones, they have that. When we purchase those this year.
But haven't we been purchasing Chromebooks with insurance this whole time?
Not always, because the insurance adds quite a bit. And we realized when you don't have the insurance, it requires a lot of work to work on the repairs and all that. And having insurance is much better. You just kind of hand it in and get a new one.
Okay.
So we're now, every set we buy now, we're making sure we have that insurance. We're paying for that.
But we have laptops in circulation that don't have insurance.
We have Chromebooks in circulation that don't have insurance, yeah.
But
I guess
ultimately-
that would make sense also long-term because after 5 years, we're hoping to continue using these if we can. I mean, we talked about the process of incorporating those into the lower grades and doing things like that. And once you get past that 5-year period of time, the insurance lapses and you're done anyway. So we certainly want some of that, but I guess I would echo that my hope was that what we were looking at doing was making the purchase of the Chromebooks more sustainable long-term by having that roll back over into the process of buying the Chromebooks. And I guess I would agree on that, but that may be a conversation for a different time. It doesn't have to be going on right now. What we can look at is the idea of, hey, this is the conversation, I think, and I think I even mentioned it in the last meeting that really what we needed was this number for the conversation we would have about the 5th grade 1-to-1 moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I agree, Chet,
Yeah.
100%. And I think what we need to do then is look at this pot of money at the end of the year based on who paid into it so that we're not holding it as part of our budget. And if a parent can't afford to do it, whether they are on free and reduced or not, then we aren't holding them to it. But we can look at it towards the end of the year and say, this is what's in that account. How many Chromebooks can we buy? Or whatever that case may be. But definitely, to Chet's point, let's have more conversation on that and start charging it, I think.
And then I think that if we go to the next page and we're looking at the teacher laptops, Chet, well, I'm not sure that this is the right plan. At least for me, it started to address the stuff that you were worried about at the last meeting. If we buy too many, what happens?
No, and this is what I was looking for,
Yeah.
was that we had a plan. I again, it can be a plan that changes. I just wanted to make sure that in our conversation, we're not going to invest a whole bunch of money in teacher laptops this year and just set ourselves up to fail in another 8 years when
Right.
suddenly all of those are outdated and they're all going bad at the same time.
Right.
So I would love to see again, even a 6-month buffer in between some of these moving forward, so that what we're doing is purchasing in the summer and purchasing in the winter maybe, or something like that. But again, not necessarily a conversation that needs to be tonight, but simply a conversation that I think we want to make sure that this is being thought about before we go and spend a whole bunch of money on new teacher laptops. So
For sure. And then the technology infrastructure. So we had talked about switches, but now we see as we sort of look out, there are other things on this infrastructure list. Does anybody have questions about that?
I would just say that I love it. I love the fact that we have this set up in a way that's going to allow us to have a heads up going forward. I know I talked to one of the Learn Tech guys, and he was talking about how he had kind of worked through this, and I think it's great that we have something moving forward.
I think, again, this will have to be something that when we sit down and talk about, so these are great plans from the Sustainable Technology Committee. The question will be now, how do we make sure that this is funded in a way that we get more than 2 years before there's like a hard stop on our sustainable technology plan? So, Troy, does anybody, you talked about the importance of funding, holding a space for technology infrastructure. Is there any correlation between the dollar amount for switches, firewalls, access points? Like, is that like, are we talking all in the same ballpark, or are these like radically different?
It does vary depending on the quality of what you purchase. I'm told that, new firewall could be 10 to 20,000. It could be more if you want, but we probably don't need one that's going to be more than 20,000. There are some that are 40,000. Access points have to be replaced at some point. I think that's going to be expensive as well. I think we're looking at between $20,000 and $40,000 a year of budgeting for infrastructure. I think easily, and that's why putting half of the infrastructure into the budget and half into non-lapsing to start out may be a wise decision. And remember that hopefully because we got that E-rate, we may be able to replace like 9 of the switches that are from 2016 this next year with those. So that gets us in pretty good shape, but I'm told the firewall is probably the next thing to be replaced, and that could be like 10 to 20,000.
Okay. Well, I mean, if we have it's a $20,000 sort of placeholder in there. That shouldn't be too crazy. All right. So that brings us to the non-lapsing versus budget chart.
Can I just throw a couple really quick things out before we move on? Sorry. it'll
Yeah,
go
go
quick. I'm just kind of requesting that after budget, if we can take a circle back on the summer school measures that we were talking about, and also to Chet's point, which was really good about when we're purchasing the IT, maybe to have some kind of purchase timing out there so that if our budget isn't going well, we haven't bought all this technology in the first month. And I'm also just wondering if we should maybe start thinking about maybe an IT subcommittee that works with the IT. Doesn't have to meet every month, please. But maybe every quarter, so that we're tracking the stuff, seeing how things are going and staying on track so that we are continuing to sustain the purchasing, again, for after budget season.
Yeah, or certainly we could look at, as we had looked at, you and I had talked about like long range budget planning. Maybe that's something that the finance committee can take on as a project, is like looking at all of this and thinking about it long term and working with that committee and then bringing it back to the board so we don't have to do this in a regular meeting. Okay, so who wants to talk about non-lapsing versus budget? Any questions?
I have a question about the smart boards. So at the last meeting, we discussed the smart boards. And at the end of the meeting, when we recapped, we said that we would put in 5. And I know I asked you about it, Troy, and you said that we needed to do some catch up. And I think with the 5 smart boards that we already have that are not hung, and if we reduce that down to 5, we would still have, 4. So we'll go to 9. Then we would have 9 that we could hang. prior to the beginning of the school year. I can't see us every year, year after year, needing to purchase 10 smart boards.
Well, we came up with the 10 because that was the part of the original sustainability technology plan that we do 10 every year
Right.
to get up to speed, because there are a lot of them that do need replacement and some teachers never had one. And those classrooms need them. It does support the innovative instruction goal. And when we were, Kathy and I crunching the numbers, we just realized that we could put them in the budget and stay within the 4% and get back to what the original sustainable technology plan was. So we saw as an opportunity, we put them in. Yeah, could we get by with less? Yes, we could, but you're going to have less teachers that have a functioning interactive whiteboard. So, you know.
And if I could just say something, that insurance number, I do have some worry about. So to Stephanie's point, as we see how the year rolls out, if the budget, if health insurance is a little bit higher, then we would have that money to put towards health insurance rather than whiteboards.
But I don't feel like we should bump up our smart board line item just in case for insurance.
No, we're not doing it just in case. We're doing it because they need 10 more whiteboards.
Okay. It's just at the meeting, we agreed on 5 as a board.
I'm with Judy on this. Not for any other reason except that I love like the goal of the sustainable technology plan, that 10 in each classroom every year or 10 new ones every year helps us play catch up and gets us on a good schedule. But I'm wondering if $40,000 worth of smart boards every year, right as we're looking to double our one-to-one Chromebook plan, may be something that isn't sustainable over time. So I would rather purchase the 5 that we talked about last time and move the other 5, do $20,000 out of non-lapsing, do the catch up there. Again, buy us some time until we can determine whether or not this sustainable technology plan is sustainable to be funded. I don't want to get us in over our heads to where we can't do what we need to do. So we could still get the 10, but only are putting 5 in our budget. And Kathy, if you feel like your line is too skinny, then maybe we need to talk about putting money. I mean, we have $12,000 that we were
Right.
factoring into the budget.
Yep.
Until today. So if you need to put more money in there, I mean, this is your area of expertise. I don't want you to be short. And I know at the end of the day, this can be moved around, but I don't want to be talking about buying 10 whiteboards
Yep.
and buy 5 and say, well, insurance is more than we thought. Like that feels,
I would prefer that we put more money back into the insurance line because we haven't officially voted on the increase with Learn. We've talked about it, but they haven't locked it down. So while they say we may go down to 8%, I really think we should just leave it at the 11% until they make a decision, because it seems to change on a weekly basis.
can you talk about what line item that would impact, Kathy, and what would be the impact?
It would impact the health insurance line, which is, 25. And the impact would be about $30,000.
Okay, so health insurance we'd need to do, so instead of a reduction of 155, we would be looking at a reduction of 125.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got to find $30,000 then.
Well,
Right.
but that would basically be that 12,000, and if you took out half of the whiteboards. But I would like to say,
Okay.
if that were not going to happen in terms of the health insurance, having interactive whiteboard, especially if we're increasing the number of one-to-one laptops that our kids are having, like that's one of the best things to have with a one-to-one laptop program, is a functioning smart board in your classroom, because there's interactive activities that happen between those two things. And they get outdated fast. Like I know it's, people are looking at it going 10 a year seems like a crazy number. My whiteboard's like 6 years old, and the browser won't even run any of the streaming services or anything online anymore, because you can't update the browsers on the old ones. Like there's all kinds of things that happen with these, but they are very integral part of most teachers' classrooms by this point. And I find it a little disturbing that we don't have them in all of our classrooms because they are the next tech and they've been around for 15 years now. So
Over half of our classrooms don't have interactive whiteboards currently.
And a lot of that had to do with our walls not being properly enforced for them, isn't that right? At the
No,
at the change of the
No.
buildings?
no, we just don't have them put up.
But
So-
the ones that we had that we couldn't put up was because their walls weren't reinforced. Isn't that what was holding up
Yes.
the hanging of the whiteboards?
It was the ordering the correct brackets.
Right, so
Yeah.
my understanding is when we did the school modernization project, that somehow something was missed and the
It's-
walls weren't
It's true.
ready.
At the elementary school,
So
you're right.
that is one of the problems that we're having.
does our
And-
high school have them in all the classrooms?
Not,
I don't know the answer to that.
No, I don't believe all.
And I think
classrooms.
currently-
No, half in the district don't have them.
And I think, Troy, was it-
Stephanie?
is that Kristen?
Stephanie? Yeah, sorry. I just want to let you know all the high school teachers have them. Some in the middle school, the middle school teachers started with Epson projectors that have been slowly over time. The plan was to begin to phase them out and put the boards in. But when we came into the building, pretty much every classroom upstairs with a few downstairs had them from the project.
Thank you so much. So I think Troy was also explaining that teachers have to be trained to use their whiteboard. So, I'm in favor of putting them there. I just don't want to, I don't want to leave Kathy short where she knows she's going to be short. Like that's a bad feeling. So if we, do we want to put 10 in our budget and purchase more than 5 out of the non-lapsing?
Right.
Wait,
We're asking for 10
So-
total.
They're
Then-
asking for 10 total, right? Saying
Yeah.
that part of that is about catch up. So that would be the plan, but a lot of that has to do with us not having them now. So if we put 5 back, we've got 10 in the budget, move 5 back out to non-lapsing, which gives Kathy that breathing room along with the 12. But do we want to bump up the number in our non-lapsing account and purchase more than 5 for a total of more than 10 this year?
Don't we
I
think we
think the
need 10 a
problem-
year?
I think we do the 10 a year moving forward, but I think that if we get 20, I don't know that we're going to get them put up. So to me, that
Okay.
doesn't make
I
sense.
just heard you saying that you were really concerned.
No,
that, like,
I
we
would
don't
be
have
concerned
them.
about us. It sounded like people were saying it seemed like a lot of interactive whiteboards. And I just want to make sure that it's known that we really should have these in our classrooms at this point, and that moving forward with the goal to improve our technology, this is one of those steps that should be occurring and they should be getting up. But I don't care where I think that we need it moving forward, to be honest. Like, I think that 10 in the budget is a good thing. If we can only get 5 in the budget this year in order to put it over there, I'm fine with that. I'm also fine with the idea that we put it over into the health insurance aspect of things for the moment. And if what we get is that 8%, then what we're saying is, okay, if that 8% comes across, then this goes back into the whiteboards and the whiteboards get purchased.
Yeah, I agree, because we don't have to make the purchases out of the non-lap. We don't have to approve anything in the non-lapsing right now.
No, but
We're
we just want to make sure we have a
placeholding them.
pathway to get them there.
Well, I guess
right?
that would be my plan, would be if we have to purchase it out of non-lapsing, then we purchase it out of non-lapsing, because then it comes up as a, hey, we can at least get 5 a year. That's a great move. We're at least moving in a right direction. But at the same time, if what we can get is 10 out of the budget, I think we get 10 out of the budget, and
So
that's
you
what we look
don't,
to do.
you don't
moving
want to buy
forward.
any more than 10.
My worry with buying more than 10 is that if we have 4 that aren't
Again,
up,
right?
then we've got 14 then that we have to get up onto walls, and it's
Right.
it's not
Were
an
you
easy
able to get the
process.
new brackets, Troy? Did you order the new brackets?
They're on their way.
They also
So you
become
ordered them?
obsolete sitting in
And
a
is that,
box.
Right.
is the cost of the brackets factored into the cost of the smart boards?
Yeah, the whole thing is, yeah.
And that is a really good point, right? Like when we're talking about them becoming obsolete, when they're sitting, they're becoming obsolete. So we don't want them in boxes. We want them on walls if we're going to buy them.
Please remember that our IT director left in October. We've had, a lot of things to deal with this year. And we have a plan. We have a written plan about what technology projects to get done from now to the beginning of the school year. And the putting up of new smart boards is on the plan.
So from my point of view, we can reduce the smart boards out of the operating budget to 5 or 20,000. In addition, the $12,000 grant, and I can take that 32,000 to bolster the.
That's perfect. That feels like it's better for you.
Yeah.
Is there any place else here that you say like, I got a real problem? Okay, that's good.
That's really good.
What else do we want to talk
You're
about?
comfortable with general building services? That was the only other spot that I wanted to ask you about, because I know that you seemed a little bit frightened when we dropped that quite as far as we did.
I think we've dropped it a lot. And are you talking about the cleaning supply line or the general building supply?
I think he's talking about the service line, right? Because we talked about the cleaning line, but we didn't change it.
Right, okay, all right. No, we'll just have to monitor it, I guess. Yep. It's gonna be us or the town.
All right, so the change that we've made to this budget is that we are moving $20,000 out of operating and adding in like income, right, of $12,000. And then you're gonna put that wherever you need to put it, but
Well, yeah, so I'll reduce the 117.5 by 32,000, and I'll put the offset into the medical.
perfect. Okay. All right, so Lisa?
Hi. So dollars out of the budget. And are we gonna do five whiteboards out of the non-lapsing account? Get a total of 10, or are we only getting the 5?
No, we're gonna move 5 out as a placeholder with the understanding that if things work favorably for Kathy with the health insurance, that we'll restore that money to the technology, and we purchase those 5 whiteboards out of the operating budget again.
Okay, and if need be, would we take it out of non-lapsing later on?
They're gonna sit there as a placeholder in
Okay,
case we need them.
thanks.
So that bumps up our non-lapsing total to, what is that? You do,
And 11.4.
thanks. Yeah, you do. It's like a little chart.
It's on the back of your left hand.
Oh,
Yep.
Check, can you give me that number one more time?
thank you.
111.4.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Is there anything else that we need to talk about on this budget? All right. Does anyone want to make a motion about this budget?
I will make a motion to move forward to the Board of Finance, our budget with the changes as noted.
Do you want a number on that?
Total number. Do you have?
The adjusted,
Yeah, do you have?
Should we get
I
that?
do.
from
Do
Kathy?
you want me to say it?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, I would make a motion to approve or to move to the Board of Finance and approve as a board our adjusted budget of $16,056,615.
I second that motion.
Hang on, Kathy, you want to make sure those numbers are right?
Where'd you get the 615? It says 441 at the bottom.
I'm not thinking about it on tonight.
Adjusted FY 26.
No, we just moved on it.
Whichever, I'll find the $200.
I thought it was 16,056,441.
Okay, on the budget consideration, that has an adjusted number at the top. So,
Oh, it sure does.
this is more than this is 4.7.
Kathy, which one's the correct one?
Good Lord, I don't know. Let me shift all these papers.
I was looking at the 4.7 as opposed to the 4.4.
You're looking at this one. I'm looking at this one.
Yeah, it's
This is the correct one?
441.
441.
You want to try again?
All right, I would like to make a motion to approve as a board and move to the Board of Finance the budget of $16,056,441 or 4%.
I second that motion.
Is there any further discussion?
Can I just make one quick comment since we're in?
Yes,
we're-
please.
I know we're moving forward with the 4%. I really, when we have our next tri-board, would like to discuss the process. I know it's the process and it's how we do it. I'd like to see how other towns do it. It would be wonderful if when we bring our budgets forward, the town brings theirs forward, we bring ours forward, and then they show us how that looks and how that looks to the taxpayer before they decide it's not palatable.
So I have been seeing it on that chart, at their meetings. They have that chart that Christine Diaz made. for
Working
them.
around our 4%.
Well, they put different numbers in there to see the impact, right? That's what they do. They add the towns and then they add ours. And then they're like, well, if we did this many percent, what does this look like? What does that do to the mill rate?
But after they cut, they didn't cut our budget, but after they're using it based on a 4% though.
They actually started at the 6.46.
Yeah, they
Oh, they
started with the
did? Yeah.
6 point-
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they put in the original one and showed what the mill rate would be.
Yeah.
And then they adjusted it until it got to a.
All right, I just still
But there's
feel
nothing
like,
wrong with doing a look back, in regards to, like how everything went. I don't mind asking for that. Anything else on this particular budget? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, any abstentions? All right. Oh, Lisa, are you voting?
Yep, I said aye.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. Okay, well, congratulations, board. We have a budget. There's nothing else on the agenda tonight. Troy, I would ask that you and Kathy make those corrections and just make sure that everything sort of ties.
I'll do
And
that.
send that over to the Board of Finance as soon as you can, and then I'll be there on Wednesday night to discuss this. And then they'll call for a town meeting. So our next meeting isn't until 4/26. And is there any public comment in the room? And is there any public comment online? Hi, Carolyn.
Hi guys, my name is Carolyn Francis. I live in Pawcatuck, but I am the music teacher at North Stonington Elementary School. I just wanted to speak really briefly on the impact of smart boards in our school, in the elementary school. I did not have a smart board my first 2 years teaching at our school, and I have had one this past year, and I just want to tell you guys that it has made an impact on my instruction more than you'd ever believe. I have students in all ages, preschool all the way through 6th grade, interacting with my smart board every day. I just did a preschool activity earlier today where we were experimenting with rhythm and they were creating rhythms. 3-year-olds coming up to my smart board and being able to touch it and use manipulatives on it. So I just kind of wanted to echo Mr. Stefanowitz and say that they are absolutely essential and so important in our schools. And I love mine dearly. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Carolyn. We're hoping to get some more over to you really soon. Any other public comment online? Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Real quick, when did you say our next meeting was?
I have 4/26. Is that wrong?
That's a Saturday,
Oh.
4/23.
Maybe we could, don't come on 4/26.
We're all
okay?
having an off night.
Let's
I
come
make a
on
motion to
4/23.
adjourn.
I'll send an email.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, adjourned. I'm sure